Good morning. We have a work session scheduled, a public hearing on a non-germane amendment, and then originally the plan was to do an executive session right after that. And I wanted to announce for everyone here, just in case you're in the obvious audience for that exec session, that we will not be doing an executive session today. I apologize for that. What we'll do is we will schedule it for next Tuesday, which I believe is May 9th. So if you're interested in any of those bills that we have left to exec, we're going to move that to next Tuesday to allow us to be better prepared. I don't know what time. I saw that it probably will be closer to 11 a.m. because we also have a request from someone who has a medical appointment. So we're trying to work around that. Next week, the one that we must exec is an early bill, and I believe that's Senate Bill 120. That we might be ready to do others at that time, but we'll get together then. So, Representative Ullery.
Oh, no, Madam Chair did say, so we're doing no execs today.
No execs today. So if you're here and you're here for that reason, then you can go home and make another breakfast or something.
Madam Chair,
Because you were here early. Yes, Representative.
could I urge this to actually be on Wednesday versus Tuesday, or if
The
it's
only problem,
Tuesday,
that problem is a problem because we're now getting very, very
the-
close to the deadline.
yeah.
So we could do both maybe, but I hate to wait to the absolute last minute on an early bill deadline,
Sure.
if that's okay.
I think I might have to have a replacement, but Tuesday I can't make it. But
Okay, let's, Representative Plett, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm wrong. Could we start early on the night?
You want to start early on the 9th now?
9 o'clock, yeah. Okay.
Could everyone be here closer to 9 a.m. on Tuesday?
I
next
just need a point of order.
Yes.
I rescheduled an appointment that they will not reschedule again for 3, which means I leave here at 1:30. And I think the rule is you have to be here all day to be in the exec. So just to be a matter of if it's in the morning, I could do it.
Okay, so you're talking about next Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. Could people be here at 9 a.m.-ish on next Tuesday? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, good. And we'll try to get our business done between 9 a.m. and what time did you need?
3:15.
Oh, okay. So between 9 and 1:30, right? Should give us the time we need. Thank you so much for your accommodation. I really appreciate that. Okay, without further ado, we will open up the work session on Senate Bill 112. And we haven't really structured anything for this, but I believe Representative Almy had an amendment she may wish to discuss and have some technical questions. Don't believe I've seen any other amendments on Senate Bill 112.
For the Republican benefit of the Republican caucus, because, well, I've talked to all but one of the Democratic caucus yesterday in a Zoom. There are complications behind 112, but I see having to do with what seems to be the principal purpose of the sponsor, Senator Ricciardi, which is to assemble more money for problem gaming and get it to the lottery. And that is, as the executive director knows, I'm quite sure, but the rest of us, I think, have forgotten or never knew. There is on the bill that did sports betting, they also created a council for responsible gaming. And instead of putting it in the lottery section, they put it in the commerce part of our laws. And so it's been ramping up, and apparently is going to start doing some good stuff now. But it was pretty quiet. On the internet, I found, no, that was the other group. There is a group that's been around a lot longer. Perhaps Charlie knows when they got started, but the Council on Problem Gaming, which is a nonprofit run by a 3-person board. I think it looked like only 2 of them were active, which has been receiving the money for problem gaming from lottery on a regular basis, and is now two of the board are on the 5-person board of the responsible gaming. The responsible gaming money comes from an administrative expense of the lottery, and is appropriated to them in the lottery appropriations in the budget, and it can be up to $250,000. For the startup, they gave them $100,000. Lately, they've been giving them, in the next budget, they will be getting $250,000 a year. And the executive director could probably explain better than I could what it's for, but it sounds like they are going to be working with the mental health centers around New Hampshire in developing programs within them specifically to problem gaming, to gambling addiction, which is, and then the other 2 people on it are from Cambridge, Massachusetts. I wasn't quite sure if it was Cambridge, England, but they are professors, I believe, and they research on gambling there. So it's that group gets a direct appropriation in the budget, and they're administratively under the lottery, but the lottery doesn't, I think, do a lot of work with them. And the other group might end up somehow merging with this one or disappearing. And that group has also, I hadn't realized until yesterday from LBAO, been getting money from the lottery in a different way somehow. But the lottery was charged in a number of places in the statutes without giving them money for it, with doing something about problem gaming. When every time somebody put a new form of gambling in, they were told, you ought to do something about problem gaming. So the question is, the amendment that I was putting forward was to take all of this, was to take the money from this bill, parimutuel racing and historic horse racing, into a dedicated fund so that it would be more visible and somewhat more ability to figure out what they were doing. But that was before I knew all about this stuff. And I think now the situation is more complicated. We need discussions, lottery, council on problem gaming, and the people interested from this committee in putting instead, this could pass as it is, and I think not mess things up, but and then that part of it be done, but then we need to figure out how those agencies and the money flowing to them gets put together in such a way that the money that Senator Ricciardi wanted to send to them doesn't just replace part of the money that's already going to them, but also would not be frivoled away. And I'm sure that the executive director is on top of this in some ways. So that's what I wanted to say.
Would it be helpful to hear from lottery of what is going on with these funds? Would you be available, Mr. McIntyre?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Charlie McIntyre. I have the privilege of being the director of Hampshire Lottery. Originally, when I believe it was Keno was passed, there was a separate fund created in HHS to address problem gaming. And that fund was funded by certain parts of Keno revenues. HHS didn't do anything with it for several years. And so that fund grew to be, I think it was $800,000. And it just sat there and nothing happened. And Governor Sununu, through his budget office, then created the Council for Responsible Gambling that was initially tied to us, thinking we would move faster and do things faster. It is a bit, it's a bit difficult, as you can imagine, being the chief bookie and then also having administratively tied to Problem Gambling Council. It would be characterized in professions as bipolar. And so they're administratively tied to us. So under the current law, they're administratively tied to us. So we help them with things like purchasing and budgeting, procurement. They use our office space. They use our facilities, their copy machines, et cetera. But I don't have anything to do with them, as you can imagine. I'd love to do it, but it doesn't make any sense. It would look unseemly. And so there's funding sources, obviously, as Representative Almy suggested, but unless it's similarly budgeted, if we make more, like for example, if this bill passed and breakage was $1 million, the remaining $750 would not go to problem gambling. It would go to the general fund because it was budgeted for $250,000. And so that has been the case for a number of years of the revenue sources that exist now. And certainly as the person who is in charge of regulating and operating gambling in the state, I would be delighted to help in any way possible to promote more services. The council is now reaching out to train, essentially trainers in addressing problem gaming. It's a very small percentage of people, but it affects their lives deeply. It ends up being about 1.5% to 2% of people who gamble have a problem. And I'll define that, I'll air quote that, it's that they have an issue and need services. So that's the history of it, where it is now. It is, like I said, administratively tied to us. There are a number of, as Representative Almy said, there are a couple of professionals who have done this as, I believe they were psychologists or professors. They were certainly educated who have done it now. The council, the executive director is a former Massachusetts correctional officer who himself was a problem gambler, and he lives in New Hampshire now. He grew up in Fall River, and he runs it. And he actually will answer calls from people on his cell phone. So folks who have a problem will call. And the council gets maybe a few dozen calls a month from people who have issues, and they try to match those folks with services. So that's it in a nutshell.
Representative Platt.
Yes, this is directed to Representative Almy. Have we got a copy of that amendment that you had? No, it isn't.
Yeah, somehow I missed it. 1528. You can look at mine.
Okay. Oh, and I understand it needs changing anyway after discussion?
Well, as I understand, you're doing something. I wanted to ask him a question, but could I do that first? Oh, could I ask him a question first and then we get to the procedural issue?
Sure. It's a work session, so we're a little more flexy.
Great, thank you. Does that, it sounds like what that is if breakage gets above 250, you're taking money that was supposed to be going to the ETF and sending it to the general fund?
No, it goes to the Education Trust Fund. All of our revenues are by
Yeah, you said GF.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. My apologies. I misspoke. It's the Education Trust Fund.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, did you found it? Okay.
I do have it, thank you.
All right, and just to get back to Representative Almy, are you happy with this amendment as is? And would-
I am happy with this amendment as is. On the thing that I'm wondering about is I understood Representative Platt was trying to work on each wager, that language. The redistribution of each wager instead of based on each dollar wagered. And so I thought there were going to be two amendments we were looking at.
Representative Platt, do you have amendment on this bill?
I have the one that she said it was in front of me, and it was.
No, but
the-
yours,
Huh?
one of yours.
One of mine?
Yeah.
What did I
Aren't
do?
you going to work on whether we should be, why we should change based on each dollar wagered to of each wager?
No.
Oh, who said that then? Oh, did you work on it?
Would it be possible first, since we first started with Representative Almy's amendment, could you walk us through the whole thing just so we fully understand it and we can ask you questions? And then if it's appropriate, then maybe Representative Fellows, you can tell us about your thoughts.
I was just answering my question about where that came from, but I think we have kind of like two totally different issues going on here. One of them is we started kind of with a discussion of what's going on with the problem gambling and the money related to that. And then the other issue in my mind is the language that we have about breakage, because from what I have been able to learn, and I did some research, is that the language in both the bill and in rules about breakage does not reflect how breakage is actually calculated, and probably, but I don't know for sure, what's actually occurring with the breakage. So those to me sound like two totally different issues. I think we should do one at a time.
Yes, I agree. Two totally different issues in here, and hopefully we can sift through that. I have heard there is ongoing problems with that language on breakage. So it may be something that has to be worked on more than just a day. So we'll see about that. And then maybe this bill turns into something else. I don't know. So we'll have to see. So do you want to walk us through your amendment?
Yes, it's easier referring to my yellow piece because they read, as usual, they redid the whole thing, and so it's hard to tell what the original bill changed and what I changed. But the first piece of it is on line 19, sorry. No, I don't have numbers on my,
22.
on, where does this thing?
It looks to me like the first change you're making is on line 2223 of the amendment.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Thank you. What I did was to take out and used as payment, and said instead, both of them say paid to the Lottery Commission. I took out as used and used as payment, and I replaced it with to be deposited in the Problem Gaming Fund under RSA 284-22C, which I create at the end. And really, most of this, except for that part at the end, is doing exactly the same thing in the others. The next one is line 6 on page 2. Takes out and used as payment, adds in to be deposited in the Problem Gaming Fund under RSA 284-22C. And then the third one is in Roman 4, on line 20, takes out unused as payment and replaces it with to be deposited in the problem gaming fund under RSA 284-22C. Then when you get to historic horse racing, which line 30, yes, it takes out and used as payment. Well, I guess that's almost the same thing. And used as payment for problem gaming services, and it instead says paid to the Lottery Commission to be deposited in that fund. And then there is a new section at the end after section 22B, which creates section 22C, Problem Gaming Fund, and that's found on page 3 in the amendment. And it defines it as providing funding for the identification and treatment of problem gamblers, non-lapsing, continually appropriated to the Lottery Commission. And the fund shall receive all the monies from breakage under everything that is in this bill. And then it creates, which is where I started, it creates a 612 notation so that the Problem Gaming Fund is in the list of dedicated funds. And when you do you add a dedicated fund, they always give it subparagraph 387 would be the next one since last year. But there may be 3 different ones coming in, and in enrolled bills, they would change the 388 to whatever number it comes up to be. There are about 120, I think, dedicated funds that we have repealed since we started doing numeration. It used to be alphabetical. And so we really don't have 387 in existence right now, but it's up there. So that's what I was doing. And
So can I just ask though, so right now we already have a problem gaming fund effectively, or for the, what?
they have 2 in the state. What they're talking right now, but what happened to the $400,000 odd that were sitting in HHS and not being used that Mr. McIntyre told us about
Okay.
just now? So this is the kind of thing that bothers me in dedicated funds, that we're always needing to try to
Yep.
get different things that different people were doing at different times and put them together in the same place if they're trying to do the same thing and one of them isn't doing anything.
Yep.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. McIntyre, we were getting in the weeds on this problem gaming fund question, and so this amendment would make a new problem gaming fund to deal with all the breakage as mentioned in this bill. So can you update us on that money that was in the other fund? Because what we don't want to end up having is 3 different funds. Yeah, we're trying to figure this out.
The HHS fund.
So that fund actually was never expended and dropped at the bottom line as a transfer to the Education Trust Fund.
Oh, it did.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And fundamentally, there'd be no need to send a fund. You could just literally have an expense on our bottom line for problem gambling, and we would just spend it. There's no need for it. Obviously, it's your prerogative, but a dedicated fund is, unless you don't want to change the nature of the funds, because obviously if it didn't spend in the year, it would lapse. So, but if you change the budget to increase or that amount, we would obviously set it aside and spend it.
Right, so that's one of the questions is, do we really want it to be non-lapsing if it's never spent for a couple of years while people are figuring out what it's needed for?
Well, fundamentally, that was the problem at first. There's no question. It was not used. It went to HHS, which obviously had a very large construct and had difficulty creating a separate small thing. So yeah, but now it is actually active and is spending funds and providing services, although limited. So yes, it would be expended.
Representative Almy, did you have more to add on that?
No, I think I
Okay, Representative Junigan?
understand that. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one question I have is, how big is breakage? Because if all breakage is going into this fund, I mean, is it too much?
Yeah.
So I guess, do we have any idea?
So the question is, we actually, thank you for the question, Representative. We were literally discussing that when I was sitting back with my colleague. Currently, it would just be around 250, ironically. It would be our expectation that that number would grow based on historic horse racing, increasing revenues monthly, and new facilities coming online. So I think it would be just about what is in the budget now, but it would be larger in next fiscal year and thereafter.
Representative Phyllis?
I'm still not clear on when you're talking about HHS. What are you talking about?
Sure, Representative, when Kena was originally passed in 2016, 17, the sale of Keno tickets, a percentage of the revenues was dedicated towards a problem gambling, and that money was set aside in a fund that was administered by HHS. They never did anything with it. The fund just grew and continued to grow. And so it was just a growing fund. And so when it transferred to us, those funds dropped to our bottom line as a transfer and went to the Education Trust Fund as essentially revenues of the lottery. And so now the funding of the Problem Gambling Commission or Council is done through the lottery as an expense of ours.
Okay, so really that is not in the picture currently.
Correct.
So my real question here has to do with the amount of money going to problem gambling issues, and if the amount is going to increase, you know, what does it really need to increase? Because what exactly is going on? So one of the things I did some research, and first of all, to help everybody understand, there are 2 New Hampshire councils related to gambling, and one of them is New Hampshire Council on Responsible Gambling, and that is a commission that the members are appointed by the governor. And then there's another one that's called New Hampshire Commission on Problem Gambling. Excuse me? So the second one is called New Hampshire Commission on Problem Gambling, and that's a nonprofit institution. And that the Commission for Responsible Gambling doesn't really, I mean, they meet, but they have to get the work done, they have a contract with the Commission on Problem Gambling, which is the nonprofit. So I looked at reports about what's going on with that and the expenditures, and I looked at their website, which had minimal information. One of the things it did is it listed places where you could go to Gamblers Anonymous meetings. Only one was in New Hampshire. The other ones were in Maine and Massachusetts. On one page, I looked at it, and there was a link on, I guess, their partners down at the bottom that said drug and alcohol. And I clicked on that, and it went to some sort of ad for gambling, which means the website, I don't know, been hacked or something. I'm sure that was not the intent. It's, I don't know, some kind of hacking or something went on with that, which is like, you know, that would be some people would think that would be very funny, obviously. So I'm just concerned that, and I looked at some of the minutes of the meetings, and they're, they get calls from maybe 15 people with gambling problems over a couple of months. And it just, if we're going to put more money in this, I think maybe there should be some more specifications on how it's used, and also the fact that one person is on both of these councils. And I've never heard of a situation where a council would be responsible for a contract with a person that's on the council. It seems irregular to me. Those are my concerns.
Certainly. So they're administratively tied to us, and so we don't manage them. I have no responsibility, as you can imagine, because of both of them. Literally, when it comes to problem, we just make the money in this context and spend it, and our CFO reviews their expenditures. Our chief compliance officer helps them with contracting and not permitting, but if there's a council matter, like the executive council matter that does so if you have questions about their operations, you're going to have to ask them.
Yeah, and we don't want to grill the director here, but maybe this is something we have to work on in a different bill, as Representative Almy mentioned, and maybe we ask those folks, what the details are. Representative Fellows.
Yes, but the chair of the Council of Responsible Gambling is an employee of
Yes,
the lottery.
exactly. Yes, she is.
So, and that's who, when I wanted to see a report, I called the number on the website, and that's where it went. And she sent me the report. So
Yes.
how can you say you're not involved?
Because her role in there, I don't supervise her in that role. Quite literally, I do not supervise her as the chair of the council. She handles it as she sees the best interest, and she's confirmed by the executive council, and has been, I think, twice. So
All right, this sounds like we might need a different work session on to deeper dive that and maybe invite some of those folks to see if they'll join us. Representative Ames, did you want to add anything?
Just a few words, because I do agree that this is really a separate discussion that we need to pursue. And I absolutely support funding for the prevention and help directed towards those who might or do engage in problem gambling. And I also want to commend the director of the lottery for supporting that as well throughout his career. And I know that from the time when I chaired the New Hampshire Gaming Commission back in maybe 2013. And not only you, but Ed Talbot, who is the person that has been mentioned indirectly, but not by name, who himself is a recovered or recovering, I don't know what the right lingo is, but a man who experienced serious problem gambling and its effects, and who has persevered through all of this time working on this issue and finding toeholds here and there to keep going. I know he was very helpful to me when I did my work at that time. Yes, we need the funding. That's one issue. We need to be sure that the funding is properly used, and that's another issue. And I think it would help all of us, because problem gambling keeps popping up as we deal as the sole committee in the House responsible for gambling with this question of problem gambling, and it keeps cropping up in the statutes, as Representative Almy has noted, with different language. I note that in this bill, it's money for problem gambling, which is a strange way of putting it. And then in Representative Almy's language is for the identification and treatment of problem gambling. And if I were writing it, I would have added prevention as another funded activity. But it's something we need to focus on, I guess is what I'm pointing to. If we pull back to this bill that's in front of us, And the question of allocating breakage to it. I think we could go forward, although I'm now pausing because of this question of is it too much money or too little? And maybe it's better to just do it by appropriation, which is where it's landed right now. It goes through the House Bill 1 appropriation process, House Bill 1 and 2. And maybe that's where judgments are made about how much money is needed and how much has been spent. That's part of the budgeting process. And it would be an expense item, and part of the review would be whether it's sufficiently independent of the lottery. So maybe it's in just the right place. And maybe we can discuss this. We don't need a separate allocation of the breakage, but I kind of like seeing that happen, and I'm just not sure about that. So I don't know where that leads us, but that's sort of expressing my thoughts on an issue that's evolving as we sit here.
So I can make 2 points, Madam Chair. I know I'm a member of the House, so I wanted to make 2 points, which I thought would be relevant. First, I think I originally gave the council the idea for a dedicated fund because when I was at Mass Lottery, I was the general counsel there, and I wrote the language that permanently funded them because their budget had been cut to zero. And so they got an account from the Mass Lottery revenues that was dedicated for life and was non-lapsing. So I think the idea came from us, me personally. So I apologize. Second, when the council was originally funded back with Keno revenues, at the time our revenues from all gambling was around 70 million. This year it'll be 180. So if the problem was X in 2015-16, it's probably more than that now. So I would suggest that overfunding it probably isn't a problem.
It sounds like there's a lot more to discuss on the fund itself, how it's structured, and so forth. Should we maybe go back to talking about the breakage definition? Do we have any experts here, including the director,
Yeah.
on the breakage definition?
So as I was leaving the room, I realized what the question was Representative Fellows had and the answer. So I apologize for, as usual, Murphy's Law having it too late. So all horse racing is based on a $2 wager. So if you go to a tote board, the board's a $2 wager. And so what you get paid off of that is on the board. So if the horse that you bet on, say, wins 340, you win your bet on a $2 bet times 340. So if you bet $10, you win $34. And the breakage would have come off of that as I understand it, the breakage would have come off of that $3.40 while multiplied 10 times. So you don't get, that makes sense? So,
Representative Platt, did you have a question?
Yeah, your math just escaped. You said it was a $2 bet.
correct. So Representative Fellows used the analogy of a $10 bet or a 10 times bet,
Yeah.
meaning that
That's
zero
5
would always
times the
make it
2.
zero.
Okay.
But so it's really 5 times the $3.40 or 10 times the $3.40.
Doubled it. 5 times the 340, right?
Correct. If it's 5 times, you would win $17 or $17. But the breakage would come off of the $3.40. If say the actual winning amount was $3.41, you would get 5 pennies would go to breakage and 340 would go to winnings, as I understand it.
I see some hands up. Representative Ullery?
So you're telling us that this is the only industry where breakage is profitable?
I don't know that. I don't know that to be the case.
There's a hole underneath my chair on the floor.
Honestly,
just
at this point, I would just give you the money back with my salary if I don't have to define breakage again. But
Representative Fellows.
I just want to say that Rick Newman explained it to me, since we met the last time, right? And he went step by step, and I understood it completely. But it needs for me to grasp it, it needed to slow down a little and go step by step. So we might want to consider that.
Yeah, if someone could maybe, I don't know, draw it out on a diagram or something so we can
Sure.
understand how this actually
Madam
works.
Chair, that's an excellent suggestion. I will send you a page definition by the close of the business this week, explaining breakage and how it works both for, I know this sounds odd, but horse racing, which is easier than historic horse racing, which is just slightly more complicated, believe it or not, but you'll get a definition.
And if there any of the vendors that do the historic horse racing can give us any help on this too, that would be helpful. Because we're dealing with two different.
Correct. And
Very
also
different
it's going to vary by vendor. Quite literally, it's going to vary by
Oh.
vendor.
So that's why it's hard to find what works for everyone. Other hands over here on this side? Yes, Representative Orse.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for taking my question. So if I understood what you said, whether it's a $2 wager or a $10 wager, if someone wins $3.43, 3 cents is the breakage. If it was a $2 bet, that means the breakage gets 6 cents. If it's a $10 bet, the breakage gets 30 cents.
Nope.
Okay, I'm
Multiply it
confused.
by 5 because it would be based off of $2. So it would be a $3.40 wager would be the amount you would win off of $2. So you would, I don't want to get into odds making, but it would be, say $3.43, 3 cents would be breakage.
I got the 3 cents part.
Yeah.
So how much actually goes to breakage if it's a $10 bet?
It would be 15 cents.
15 cents.
Because it's 5 $2 bets.
5, 2.
It's 5 shares of the win pool.
Okay, I got that, but I don't know if I could
what I was
explain it back. Thank you.
What's that? That's right. I think that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Representative Elberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When some of us learn different ways. So when you send out your explanation sheet, if you could try to give us information in different ways, such as percentages as well as examples, it would certainly be helpful to me. Thank you.
Sure. Absolutely.
Representative Omi.
Thank you. Is it possible to do that for horse racing and for the machines on with and without the change of language? From based on each dollar to of each wager?
I believe so.
Oh,
Certainly
great.
we'll give it an
That
effort.
would be lovely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We've got another few minutes. Other questions? Yes, Representative Spilsbury.
Yeah, this is a very minor suggestion. I wouldn't file an amendment to do it, but if we're rewriting this, online, page 1 of the bill, line 18, where it says multiple of 10, I got the impression that this was confusing and just adding the word cents. Multiple of 10 of what? It's the multiple of 10 of the odd cents. So just putting the word cents in each of the 4 places that it occurs, I think would eliminate some confusion.
I apologize. You're looking at the bill itself, right? Not the amendment?
Yes, whether it's the bill or the amendment.
Because I didn't see. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So in each of these 4 passages that are amended, the phrase "to the next lowest multiple of 10, add cents" 4 times.
Mr. McIntyre, does that help or hurt, do you think?
I don't know. I don't have the amendment in front of me, not the bill. I'm sorry, Representative, Madam Chair.
If what's that? Yeah, I only see it in the bill. I don't see it in the amendment. So when you get a minute, we have more time on this bill. Oh, it is in the amendment? I couldn't find it. It
Yeah,
just maybe a different line.
The amendment restates the same
Line
passage.
20.
Okay.
Line
Oh,
20.
line 20. Okay. No, I'm good. We've never had issues before with it, so.
Representative Leapley.
My question doesn't have to do with breakage, so I can
See
wait.
if Mr. McIntyre has a good response first, and then we'll go there. I'm sorry. So what do you think about adding the word "cents" to line 20 of the amendment? Does that make any sense? Do you want to think about it?
Don't think about it. Sir,
Yeah.
yeah, please. I just saw
Okay.
it. I don't.
Yeah, I just this is really technical in terms of how this is actually going to impact.
Because one of the difficulties is how how the simulcast the tracks define breakage matters, how it comes in, as well as how the manufacturers of the machine define breakage. So I don't want to overly limit that and have them change programming based off of it. So you've got hundreds of machines in the field now, all of which are programmed and tested, which is a very expensive process. Each one has been run through a lab. So I don't want to speak, shoot from the hip, as it were, about changing how they would do programming. And then you'd have to pull several hundred machines potentially off the field, retest them based off of new requirements. That's all.
So,
You understand the issue, Madam Chair, I believe.
Madam Chair,
Representative Fellows.
you might want to consider if you have to put in the $2 there, because it's a wager of, that's computed on a wager of $2.
Correct. That's traditional horse racing. I would have to confirm with the manufacturers as to what their wagering basis is and what breakage is defined by that.
So,
Oh.
can I assume, or maybe I shouldn't assume anything anymore, if when you go to the racetrack and when you're doing simulcast, would it be any different?
Would it be different? I'd have to check. Please.
Well,
Okay, so staying with the breakage concept, other questions on breakage? Representative Ullery?
Just to follow up, in the shipping industry, breakage and spoilage have entirely different meaning than they do here, and that's what I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Oh, certainly. It does so in the liquor business too. So.
Okay. Representative Leafly? Did you?
Thank you. I just wanted to reaffirm that I think this is a really important issue and that we need to make sure that it's funded generously and in a way that will grow as gambling in the state grows. I'm sure lots of people here have their own experience with this issue. I was a victim. My family was a victim of a gambler who devastated our finances and his own life and the life of many people around him. And just in trying to understand this issue, listening to some of the webinars, looking around online, it sounds like we don't have a great handle on who is gambling in the state, how many gamblers there are. But just if I were to put together some numbers that I've heard, and maybe you can correct me if you have better information, but one of the webinars I was looking at last night said that there were probably 65,000 gamblers in the state. And
Certainly, I have all those numbers in my head as well as in
Right.
data form, various ways.
okay,
You'd have to define gambler as
right.
to sort of what they do, and I could give you the number as to how many do it.
Right. So where I was going with this, and I welcome you to jump in, but I was starting to put together, okay, if 2% of gamblers are problem gamblers, and there are 65,000 gamblers in the state, that's 13,000 people who would have a problem with gambling. So
It would be, no, it'd be 150, 1,200. 1,200.
1,300.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know a lot of you have a math background, so thank you. So that's like $190 per person if we're talking about $250,000 in an account, right? So I think I'm really happy that we're spending some real time thinking about this issue, because as I looked around and thought about what we were doing, it almost appeared like what we're doing is, obviously the state advertises gambling a lot, right? We're telling people they should go gamble. We're encouraging them to go gamble. We're spending money encouraging people to gamble in the state. So I just want to be cognizant of that. And on the other hand, like you said, we also want to support people who have a problem. And it kind of seems like the way we're supporting them right now is really just, I mean, if we're talking about a budget of $250,000, it's going to be communication, right? It's going to be a billboard that says, hey, call this phone number. Hey, call these people. It's not going to be actually paying for mental health services for folks, right? And the other thing I picked up as I was reviewing this information last night is 76%, generally, not in New Hampshire, of people who have a gambling problem also have a problem with drugs or alcohol. So it seems like it's a pretty sophisticated mental health nexus of events that is going to require some sort of support beyond, a fraction. If we're going to spend a fraction telling people, here's the hotline to call Gamblers Anonymous, we're going to spend 1% of a budget doing that. And, $1 million times, I don't know what amount, telling people to go gamble, that doesn't seem very well thought out. So I'm glad that we're going to stop and think about how much money are we dedicating to this, and where's that money going? Is it just going to make a flyer to tell people like they can call someone, but there's actually no support there? And it does sound like there are some real experts in the psychological field who are doing research in this area who understand this nexus. So it does sound like we can consult with people and find out how to do this well. So I just wanted to support Representative Ames' comments that this is a really important issue, and I'm really glad we're spending time on it. And I hope that we will fund it adequately and set it up so that it is successful and overseen adequately. So thank you for dedicating the time to this morning.
Absolutely. And Representative Malloy.
Thank you. I wanted to address what Representative Leapley just said. I think we were watching the same video, and I wrote down from that 65,000 were problem gamblers. That's what I thought that video said, and 8,000 were pathological. Did I hear that wrong, or was that okay? I just wanted to put that out there.
That seems strange, but I don't know. I don't know where you got that. Do you know who put that out?
That video was sent. I got that from Representative Ames, and that was Mr. Talbot. That was Mr. Talbot who was.
Okay, I don't
using
believe
the
I
numbers.
saw that email. So thank you. Okay, other hands up. Yes, Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back to Representative Almey's amendment, there is no problem with anyone here about the words "to be deposited," changing it from "used as payment." Is there any problem with those words by anybody here? Well, it doesn't matter. It's all three. Line 6 on Representative Almey's amendment, line 20, it changes the line 30. I just want to make sure we're just going to be going to one other area when we do go to the study. The word to be deposited is what Representative Almey said instead of "and used as a payment" on all the lines. I'm just asking a question here. Does anybody have an objection to what she has written, "to be deposited" versus "used as payment" from the original bill?
Just seems clearer.
I'm sorry, Representative Southworth. Which one seems clearer to you?
The change made by Representative Almey.
The deposited.
Yeah, to
Okay.
be deposited just is much more specific.
Okay, gotcha. And Representative Ullery, I see a light.
Yeah, two things, not to follow up on this immediately. When you putting it into the fund as established by 28422C, that is what the payment comes from. So
That's fine.
you're absolutely correct. I would like to ask a question, please. Previously, this breakage fund went as a kind of an incentive to the game operator. Is that correct, sir?
It was split three ways. It was split the operator, us, and state treasury.
Okay. What follow up, Madam Chair? What would be the effect on the stimulus or the incentivization of the game operator? Would it have a deleterious effect on operating these games, or how's that going to work?
I mean, they would lose the revenues. It's simple as that. In some states, I think breakage is 100% to the operator. And so it would be revenue that would be lost by the specific entity, which is Seabrook. The historic horse racing operators have already had this baked in with them in terms of breakage. I don't think they'd be opposed, but I'll have to check with them. It's on them.
Follow up again, Madam. So if we were to eliminate the incentive, we would disincentivize offering this game to other individuals, which then in turn would reduce the amount of funds going into the problem gaming category.
I mean, yes, it's less profitable for them.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Leapley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to share the video that was referenced is available on YouTube. It's New Hampshire Council for Responsible Gaming put it up, and it's a conversation about problem gaming prevention and treatment in New Hampshire with members of the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gaming, which is the other one, and the New Hampshire Council for Responsible Gaming. So both of them together participated in that video.
Okay, Representative Almy.
I turn it on and it turns off. When we were dealing with the idea of a major casino, we went into a lot of the statistics, and one of the things that we found out was that the addiction rate could rise near a major casino, the people who lived near there and could go daily, to 8% of the gamblers. So that may be where that 8 number came from. But what this would be doing if we passed it on this at this point would simply be taking all of that money and specifying that there is a dedicated fund on, I called it the Problem Gaming Fund just out of something in my head from the past. I have no concern with what it's actually called. But it would not be changing anything else in this. The thing that is changing stuff is if we fool around with what each wager is.
Representative Elberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, just to respond to Representative Schamberg's question, I agree. I like the language, the way it's presented now, that very clear funneling. I'm not sure if you're asking for that information, but and to follow up on Representative Leapley's comment about risky behavior. In one of my earlier lives, I ran alcohol and later drug abuse programs, which were at that time considered totally different. Most of us know they're not. But it's clear that risky behaviors that include gambling, that include substance misuse, smoking, unprotected sex with multiple partners, driving ridiculously fast in bad places to do that, tend to be connected. And it might be worth, not instead of this, but at some point to consider trying to set up some kind of commission or organization to address the whole notion of risky behavior. When I was working in the field, it was clear that the gateway drug, which many people thought was marijuana, was not, but in fact was tobacco. And it was the most simple predictor of further substance misuse. So all of those things are connected. Thank you.
Representative, I'm not sure who had their hand up first. Representative Fellows, I apologize. I was taking notes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one idea, and then I have two technical questions. So my idea is that in terms of how we split the breakage, once we figure out how much that is, that it doesn't have to be the same for a track or simulcast or the HHS machines. Just not to discuss now, but just the idea that it doesn't have to be the same for all of them. And my questions had to do with, I saw an ad on TV, and it was for sports betting, and they were talking about the Kentucky Derby. So can you tell me, I was thinking that horse racing would be under these laws, but I saw something on the ad on TV.
Thank you for the question. We don't currently accept horse racing wagers through our sports betting platform.
And it's not, there'd have to be some kind of statute change to do that?
So there's another bill pending before you called advanced deposit wagering, which sort of
yeah.
corrects. So currently, the status is there are operators taking wagering on horse racing over mobile and internet that we do not regulate. They're doing it currently. There are a few operators that do that. I don't believe they advertise on TV, but I do know that they will send emails and the like. We don't regulate them currently. There's a bill before you to bring them under the fold and legalize the activity.
Okay, thank you.
When you say operators, you mean vendors.
Vendors, yeah.
Mobile vendors.
Yeah, so yeah, there's Churchill Downs was one. They've ceased operations or postponed. There's one called TVG that does it as well. It's a small niche market currently. They operate under a gray area under a federal law called the Interstate Horse Racing Act of 1978, which they allege makes them legal. We don't believe it does. Our AG said it's gray. Why don't you fix it in statute? So that's why the law's bills
Okay,
before you.
let's keep going around the room.
The other question I had is in terms of where the money goes for the problem gambling, it goes to the Council for Responsible Gambling. So is that in statute or is that in rules? Where is that?
It's in the sports betting rules. Statute. Yeah, it's in the sports betting law. Yeah, statute. Yeah. Sorry, it's been so many times that has been referenced in so many bills that have passed this body. I lose track, but yes, it's sports betting.
Okay, other hands up on this side of the room. Representative Ames? Yep.
I just wanted to make this point that as we've talked about the issue of problem gaming, some numbers have been mentioned about the number of gamblers out there and then the incidence of responsible gaming. I just want to caution everyone, there's been a lot of research, there's a lot of data that is available. I don't want us to be walking away from here thinking that there are 165,000 problem gamblers in New Hampshire. I'm not sure that's right. I see Director McIntyre agreeing with me, so maybe you could speak on that.
Well, certainly. So if there are 1 million adults, giving round numbers of the state, about 1 million adults, we sold about 500,000 of them a Powerball ticket last year, or 2 or 3 or more. So that's the largest product we have in terms of breadth. But it's because of the velocity, because the drawing's only every other third day, you can't play as often. So problem gamblers don't really go to Powerball. So the universe of problem gamblers who do Powerball is very, very low because it doesn't happen very often. Whereas sports betting is a very small market, meaning we only have about 100,000 registered users. And any given month, we only have between 30 and 50,000 people who access the platform. And that includes folks from out of state. So you're talking in-state problems. If it's 2%, sports betting might be a higher because it's velocity, because you can play more often. There's always sporting events on. And so you have to sort of, when you define gambler, it's a Powerball player to a sports bettor, velocities, which I've read literature, which is how accessible it is and also how often you can play, meaning can you play immediately or do you have to wait 3 days? Will help define if it's a problem or not for the person or create the problem. So I'd say the number's probably close to 15, 20,000 people in the state. Maybe 15,000 would have maybe an issue. And based on the calls we get, the council gets, it gets maybe a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen calls a month. But also, for example, we have the DraftKings platform and our iLottery platform have functions that you can call in and say, I want to exclude myself because I have a problem or whatever. And those have hundreds and hundreds of people and I think the DraftKings platform exceeds 1,000 people now exclude themselves, will voluntarily exclude themselves. And there are rare instances, but it does happen where a person will use the call center and use language which we believe is a problem, meaning I need to win this month because of my mortgage payment, and then we will cancel their account. Something like that. It hasn't happened often, but it happens, and we will disable the account for that problem. So I would say 15,000 is probably a number you could work with in terms of the state.
Representative Almy?
Yes, there have been for a long time, we used to be just scratch tickets. And there are people there was one I was told about by my convenience store operator when I was getting my paper there many years ago, who we are across from a ball bearing plant, and every payday he would come in and buy 80 scratch tickets and then stand there and open them until he'd run out, and then he'd go home with less money to his wife. So that's scratch tickets is something that most people, a lot of people in the state do, but a lot of people are only doing one for Christmas or 5 for a Christmas present or something like that. So, but it's really very difficult to identify, and what we heard when we were doing the casino work was that it's that a lot of gamblers that have a major problem do, and I think Representative Leapley knows, do not want anybody to know and are not willing to go and get help because they're going to fix everything with the next win.
Okay, we've now spent quite a bit of time on this. I think the consensus, correct me if I'm wrong, is that no matter what, this bill needs more work, right? We have two issues. We have the breakage definition, and then we have how do we handle the money and make sure the money is going for proper uses effectively. So we are not going to exec this today. We have much more time to work on this. This is not an early bill, so we have a little bit more time so we can consider if you want to move your amendment later, or if other people have amendments, so we have a little bit more time, or maybe the right thing to do is a separate bill for some of these issues. Representative Almy?
I think it would be really important to do this as a separate, well-conceived bill, but I think it would also be helpful if we could get the woman that is in charge of this to come talk to us, since you really shouldn't be talking about it.
Correct. I'll happily pass along the message, and I'll have her, Madam Chair, if it's okay, I'll have her contact you, and that'll be the extent of my, but I will certainly pass along the information. In fact,
Excellent.
Val's
We can
writing
we
that
can
note.
discuss whether that would be a work session on this bill, or if it's something we wanted to do separately. I just have to think through the proper format to do that, but we will. And it sounds like there is a lot of interest in doing a separate bill for next term. So we'll continue to explore all of those options. Another hand was being raised over there. And there's your thing, Representative Southworth. I see it. I see it now.
When people lean forward, it's not.
I apologize. It is hard to see sometimes in the corners.
Thank you. Just following up on your figure, which I appreciate, of around 15,000, and following up on other comments, there's similar patterns with all the different kind of addictions. My sense would be then you'd have a much smaller number, which might even be 2,000 or 3,000, but those are the much more severe people who actually need much more intervention, which is going to take a chunk of the funds.
Yeah, it's a difficult number to assess only because it's also needs and sort of means based. Like I have a gentleman who wagers sports betting, very large figures, very large, but he owns a Gulfstream. And so for him, this is what he does for fun. And it's figures that would astound you, but it's not a problem for him because he loves to do it, and he can easily afford it. So but yeah, you're right. For a smaller percentage, it's a larger problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay. I guess we can close this, and I should mention that I'm involved in this industry. I'm not sure how this would impact me, but I am involved in this industry. But we will close the work session on Senate Bill 112 and continue discussions on that. Okay, so now we will open up, and I forgot I don't have a little gavel. We will now open up the public hearing on Senate Bill 19, and we have a non-germane amendment, number 1475, hopefully in your pile, and we'll take a moment to look at that. Hold on. Let me just see if I can find it.
I left them both. There's two amendments, and I put a copy of each in everyone's place. 1475, and there's also 1603.
Okay, let me just look, see if I can find it. Yes, okay. All right, everyone has it, and okay, so we had heard that there were some interest in amendments on this bill. We checked with the House Clerk. He thought it would be best to do a non-germane amendment hearing so that we could make sure we discuss this publicly. So Representative Plett, would you like to go through your amendments?
Yes, thank you. And I mentioned there's two amendments, 1603 as well. They both do the same thing, but different sections of the law, so they have to be two different amendments. One's essentially 1603 is off of 1475. The amendments simply allow Lucky 7 to be allowed over the same 16 days that bingo would be allowed should this Bill 16 Senate Bill 19 FN become law. The amendment requires a separate hearing since this House Clerk ruled that the amendment non-germane. He did so because the amendment inserts wording in RSA 287E21, whereas the original bill concerned RSA 287E6. Same chapter and section, but a different subsection concerning Lucky 7 rather than bingo. I urge the adoption of this amendment. Thank you. And going on to 1603, it was pointed out to me by Rick Newman, thank you very much, that this wording is twice in the statute. The statute may need editing and have the whole thing rewritten and come back to us for approval for the executive rewrite. But 1603 is a different section of the same wording. So it was in there twice, where it was Lucky 7 was 10 days. We have to change it to 16, so it's consistent throughout.
I actually do have a pink card from Rick Newman, so when you're done, Representative, we'll ask him to come up and help us. You all set?
Yes.
Okay, great. Representative Janigian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Plett, did you mean Amendment 1606? Because that's what I have in front of me, not 1603.
No, it's 1606 is mine,
It looks like this.
and it's different.
Yeah, so
Another one. Oh, okay.
I meant 1603.
No, that's what you said. I don't think I got. Find it. I don't have 1603. All right.
All right, I have on the second one for some reason, so
Oh,
maybe that's
that's
yours.
why.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then we also have another amendment. Representative Almy, you have an amendment as well. So we have three amendments. So let's talk about them all now, and then we'll ask the person to testify. But what, you want to explain this to us?
Oh, mine too?
Yeah.
This is, thank you. This came from Senator Susie, and it was introduced here by Senator Rosenwald. And through continually asking them, I finally got word back that the Senate Republicans are fine, that Senator Avard in particular, who is this prime sponsor, approves of this amendment also. it was a little difficult because he was traveling and out of touch. And his second was sick, is sick. So what it does is to just increase the amount of money that the charities themselves can pay on volunteers that have had to take a long bus ride, buy dinner, maybe pay for pens to bring for the bingo game, that kind of thing. That would that the amount of money is in the law now as not to exceed $25. And $25 was put in quite a long time ago, and inflation has eaten into it. And we all have heard that they're having trouble getting volunteers for the bingo games. They have to run with volunteers in bingo, and because of our law. And so they wanted to get an increase up to 50, meaning that the charity will get expense statement from the volunteer and agree with all or part of it, and then pay them whatever that was. It doesn't mean they get $50. It means that they get whatever their expenses that the charity accepts would be. So that's all it does, but it did seem to me like a useful thing to keep the bingo games going for the people that still like to play bingo and like to socialize at bingo.
I should just mention, though, that we are discussing it because we're discussing this topic and we have experts here, but this technically probably would not be considered germane because it is in a different section of
Yeah.
the statute. So we may have to actually put that on the calendar for next week when we exec it, just to be fully everyone aware of what's going on here. But I thought it's important that we
understand
discuss
that.
it. Yeah.
The clerk has gotten quite rigorous all of a sudden.
Yeah, on this particular issue, it's, yeah.
Because as a operation of a bingo game, it always would have been considered germane before, but
Yeah,
that's what
so
he's
we'll
doing.
comply with whatever
He
we need to
runs
do.
it.
Okay, I should mention that I am involved in this industry, so I am impacted by this bill. Rick Newman, would you be available to come up and testify? Is there, and if anyone else would like to speak, please fill out a pink card.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Rick Newman, and representing the New Hampshire Association of Charitable Gaming Operators. And I should also mention, I also represent the Spartans Drum and Bugle Corps out of Nashua, who originally I testified on this bill at the original hearing. Just want to focus on Representative Plett's amendments and to reiterate what he said, that these amendments make the statute consistent. If you pass Senate Bill 19 to allow bingo games to go from 10 to 16 days a month, these two amendments would allow the sale of Lucky 7 to go from 10 to 16 days as well. I think it's just really a technical change, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions, I
Thank
don't
you.
think. Thank you so much. Anyone else in the audience who would like to discuss this? Questions? We have experts from lottery. Experts. Okay. Oh, Representative Phyllis.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Representative Plett's amendment, the 1603, has a whole section about the dispensers. So are the dispensers already covered, or is this kind of, oh, this isn't a,
I think it's just reiterating existing statute, but just showing you the change.
but it says that section 2 is a new subparagraph. Oh, 3 is not. 3 is, never mind. Just forget I said that.
Yeah, sometimes the way these amendments are coming back is a little confusing, in my opinion. It's
The only
different from-
change is to change 10 days to 16 days in 2 places for Lucky 7, period.
OLS is doing things a little bit differently this year, so it's getting a little caught up with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it? Seeing no one else signed up. Yep, go ahead. Representative Schamberg?
This amendment, Representative Plath, over, would this have to go back to the Senate if it's amended, or is it a committee of conference it would go to?
Anytime we amend something, then the Senate can either concur, non-concur, or request a committee of conference. Other comments, questions, testimony? Seeing none, we will now close the public hearing on Senate Bill 19 with Amendment 1475.
Madam Chair, should I limit it to that, or should I cover 1603 as well?
I believe 1603 as well, because it is related to that.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's what I did.
And is 1606, does anyone have any questions about that?
1606, again, we'll schedule a public hearing on that, even for just 5 minutes, just to make sure we catch everyone who has a comment on that. And then hopefully, well, maybe we'll be able to exec it next week. We'll see. Again, this is not an early bill, so we do have time. So you can look this over and see what questions you have. Okay, so we are now, I believe, done for the day. And we will plan to reconvene next Tuesday in the 9 a.m. to 1 kind of range. We're going to focus on that to try to get things done and to be able to have all of you attend. Thank you so much for being here today. Next week, yes. So we're going to hear this non-germane amendment, and then unless we need to do any other work sessions, we will then go into an exec session. And of course, each caucus may break from time to time to discuss things and where things are going. But at a minimum, we will be taking up an exec session for Senate Bill 120, because that is an early bill and will be absolutely under deadline. Okay, so just be prepared for that. Thank you very much.
We've got to save the one from school.
Now, we're going to think about what we're going to do next week.